Chapter 1. The Discovery. Dr. Lina Sorenson stared at the computer screen, her eyes wide with disbelief. She turned to her colleague, Dr. Ethan Ramos, who stood beside her in the dimly lit observatory. "This can't be right," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Check the data again." Ethan nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Moments later, he shook his head. "It's confirmed, Lina. The asteroid is on a collision course with Earth. We have only 6 months. Lina felt her stomach drop. She had dedicated her life to studying the cosmos, but never in her wildest dreams had she imagined making a discovery that could spell the end of humanity. As the reality sank in, Lina and Ethan frantically reached out to their colleagues around the world. Within hours, the news had spread like wildfire, and panic began to grip the globe. In an emergency meeting at the United Nations, world leaders argued and shouted over each other. Lina watched from the sidelines, her heart racing as she tried to make sense of the chaos. "We must tell the public," one leader demanded. "No, it will only cause more panic," another countered. Lina stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "With all due respect, we don't have time for debates. We need to act now." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. Lina took a deep breath and continued. "I know it seems hopeless, but we can't give up. We have to find a way to save ourselves, to save our planet." For a moment no one spoke. Then a voice broke the silence. "Dr. Sorenson is right," said the President of the United States. "We need a plan, and we need it now." As the meeting adjourned, Lina found herself surrounded by a group of scientists and engineers, all eager to help. They worked around the clock, running simulations and debating options. Late one night, as Lina pored over a stack of papers, her assistant, Dr. Raj Patel, burst into the room. "Dr. Sorenson, I think I found something," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. Lina looked up, her heart skipping a beat. "What is it, Raj?" "A classified government project hidden for decades. It's a long shot, but it might be our only hope." Lina felt a flicker of hope amidst the despair. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but she refused to give up. With renewed determination, she turned back to her work, ready to fight for humanity's future. As the weeks turned into months, Lina and her team raced against the clock, pushing themselves to the brink of exhaustion. They faced setbacks and obstacles at every turn, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that billions of lives hung in the balance. Finally, as the asteroid loomed ever closer, Lina and her team unveiled their plan to the world. It was a gamble, but it was the only chance they had. As she stood before the cameras, Lina felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice steady and clear. "We have a choice," she said. "We can either give up and wait for the end, or we can fight for our future. I choose to fight, and I hope you will too." Chapter 2. The Mission. In a secret underground facility, a group of scientists, engineers, and military personnel gathered around a massive structure hidden beneath a tarp. Dr. Lina Sorenson stood at the front of the room, her heart racing with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "I present to you our last hope, the starship Exodus." With a dramatic flourish, she pulled back the tarp to reveal a sleek silver spacecraft unlike anything the world had ever seen. The crowd gasped in awe, and a buzz of excitement filled the room. "This ship is the result of decades of secret government research," Lina explained. "It's equipped with advanced propulsion technology that will allow us to travel to the stars in search of a new home." As the team began to familiarize themselves with the Exodus, Lina pulled aside the ship's captain, a gruff military man named Marcus Rodriguez. "Captain Rodriguez, I need to know that you're fully committed to this mission," Lina said, her eyes locked with his. "The fate of humanity rests on our shoulders." Marcus nodded solemnly. "I understand the gravity of the situation, Dr. Sorenson. My crew and I will do whatever it takes to find a new planet for our people." As the final preparations were made, Lina couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty wash over her. She approached her mentor, Dr. Harold Finch, who had been instrumental in the Exodus project. "Dr. Finch, do you really think this will work?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The elderly scientist placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Lina, I've watched you grow from a brilliant young student into one of the most capable scientists I've ever known. If anyone can make this mission a success, it's you." Lina nodded, drawing strength from his words. She knew that failure was not an option. As the Exodus prepared for launch, the world watched with bated breath. Millions gathered around televisions and computer screens, their hearts filled with a mixture of hope and fear. Lina stood on the bridge of the ship, her eyes fixed on the view screen as the countdown began. "To minus 10 seconds, a voice announced over the intercom. Lina glanced around at her fellow crew members, seeing the determination etched on their faces. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition! The ship shuddered as the engines roared to life, and the Exodus lifted off from the launch pad in a blaze of fire and smoke. As they rocketed towards the heavens, Lina felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. She knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with danger and uncertainty, but she also knew that they had no choice. The survival of the human race depended on the success of their mission. As the Earth grew smaller and smaller behind them, Lina stared out at the vast expanse of space before her. Somewhere out there amongst the stars lay the key to their salvation, and she would stop at nothing to find it. Chapter 3. The Voyage. As the Exodus hurtled through the emptiness of space, the crew settled into their new routine. Dr. Lina Sorenson found herself spending long hours in the ship's research lab, poring over data and searching for any signs of a habitable planet. One evening, as she was working late into the night, Captain Marcus Rodriguez entered the lab. "Dr. Sorenson, you need to get some rest," he said, his voice firm but gentle. Lina shook her head, her eyes never leaving the screen. "I can't, Captain. Every second counts. We have to find a new home before it's too late." Marcus sighed, pulling up a chair beside her. "I understand your dedication, but you won't be any good to anyone if you burn yourself out. Trust me, I've seen it happen before." Lina finally turned to face him, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. "I just feel so helpless," she admitted. "What if we don't find a planet in time? What if all of this is for nothing?" "We can't think like that," Marcus said, his gaze intense. "We have to believe that we'll succeed. It's the only way we'll make it through this." As the weeks stretched into months, the crew faced a series of challenges that tested their resolve. A malfunction in the ship's life support system nearly cost them precious oxygen, while a meteor shower damaged one of the Exodus's engines, forcing them to make repairs in the depths of space. Through it all, Lina and Marcus found themselves growing closer, their initial wariness giving way to a deep respect and admiration for one another. They spent long hours talking about their lives back on Earth, their hopes and fears for the future. One night, as they shared a quiet moment in the ship's observation deck, Marcus turned to Lina, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about what you said before, about feeling helpless. I want you to know that you're not alone in this. We're all in it together." Lina felt a surge of emotion wash over her. "Thank you, Marcus. That means more to me than you know." As they gazed out at the stars, a sudden beeping from the ship's sensors shattered the stillness. Lina rushed to the console, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it?" Marcus asked, his voice tense. Lina's eyes widened as she read the data. "It's a planet," she breathed, "and it's showing signs of life." The crew gathered around, their faces a mix of hope and disbelief. Could this be the new home they had been searching for? As the Exodus drew closer to the planet, Lina felt a sense of trepidation wash over her. She knew that the challenges they had faced so far were nothing compared to what lay ahead. "We need to be cautious," she warned. "We have no idea what kind of environment we're walking into." Marcus nodded, his jaw set with determination. Agreed, but we can't turn back now. This could be our only chance. As the ship entered the planet's atmosphere, Lina felt a rush of adrenaline surge through her veins. She knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders, and as the Exodus touched down on the surface of the alien world, she knew that their true test was only just beginning. Chapter 4. The New World. As the Exodus landed on the surface of the alien planet, the crew stared out in awe at the landscape before them. Rolling hills of lush green vegetation stretched out as far as the eye could see, while a bright blue sky hung overhead. Dr. Lina Sorenson felt a surge of excitement as she stepped out onto the planet's surface, her boots sinking into the soft, damp soil. "It's breathable," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "The atmosphere is similar to Earth's." Captain Marcus Rodriguez nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "We'll need to run more tests to be sure, but this is a good sign." As the crew set up a temporary base camp, Lina and a team of scientists began to explore the surrounding area. They collected samples of the plant life, marveling at the strange and beautiful flowers that seemed to bloom in every color of the rainbow. But as they ventured deeper into the forest, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Lina felt a chill run down her spine as she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. "Did you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Her colleague, Dr. Raj Patel, shook his head. "I didn't see anything. It was probably just an animal." But as they pressed on, the feeling of unease only grew stronger. And then, without warning, they stumbled upon a clearing that made their blood run cold. In the center of the clearing stood a towering structure, its surface covered in strange alien symbols. It was clear that the structure had been built by intelligent life, but there was no sign of the creatures that had created it. "What is this place?" Lina whispered, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. As they approached the structure, they noticed that the symbols seemed to be arranged in a pattern. Raj ran his fingers over the surface, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I think it's some kind of language," he said, "but I've never seen anything like it before." Suddenly a loud crack echoed through the clearing, causing the team to jump. They spun around, their hearts pounding in their chests, but there was nothing there. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the structure vanished before their eyes, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Lina and her team raced back to the base camp, their minds reeling with questions. What had they just witnessed? And what did it mean for their mission? As they relayed their discovery to Captain Rodriguez and the rest of the crew, a sense of unease settled over the group. They had come to this planet in search of a new home, but now they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. In the days that followed, the crew continued to explore the planet, but they remained on high alert. They set up sensors and cameras around the base camp, hoping to catch a glimpse of the alien life that seemed to be watching them from the shadows. And then, one night, as Lina was reviewing the footage from the cameras, she saw something that made her heart stop. There, in the grainy image, was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was tall and slender, with long, spindly limbs and a head that seemed to be almost translucent. And as Lina watched, the creature turned to face the camera, its eyes glowing a deep, haunting blue. She knew in that moment that their mission had just taken a terrifying turn, and as she raced to warn the others, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover a truth that would change everything they thought they knew about the universe. Chapter 5. The Revelation. As the crew of the Exodus gathered around the monitor, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and fascination, Dr. Lina Sorenson felt a sense of dread wash over her. The image of the alien creature burned itself into her mind, its haunting blue eyes seeming to stare directly into her soul. "What do we do now?" asked Dr. Raj Patel, his voice trembling. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stepped forward, his expression grim. "We need to find out what we're dealing with, but we also need to be careful. We have no idea what these creatures are capable of." Lina nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "I think our best bet is to try to communicate with them. If they're intelligent enough to build structures like the one we saw, then maybe they can understand us." But as they began to plan their next move, a sudden tremor shook the ground beneath their feet. The crew stumbled, grabbing onto each other for support, as the shaking intensified. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the tremor stopped. An eerie silence settled over the planet, broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing. "What was that?" whispered Raj, his eyes wide with fear. Lina shook her head, a terrible realization dawning on her. "I think we just felt the impact of a celestial body hitting the planet's surface." As they raced outside to investigate, they saw a plume of smoke rising in the distance. They quickly boarded a scout ship and flew towards the site of the impact, their hearts pounding in their chests. When they arrived at the crater, they couldn't believe their eyes. There, lying in the center of the devastation, was a massive fragment of rock and metal, and etched into its surface were the same alien symbols they had seen on the structure in the forest. Lina felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the truth. "This isn't just a random impact," she said, her voice shaking. "This is a piece of a larger structure, a structure that was destroyed by a cataclysmic event." As they explored the crater further, they found more fragments of the alien technology, each one bearing the scars of a terrible destruction. And then, half buried in the rubble, they found something that made their blood run cold. It was a humanoid skeleton, its bones blackened and twisted by the force of the impact. And clutched in its bony hand was a device that looked all too familiar. "It's a warning beacon," said Marcus, his voice grim. "Just like the ones we used to send out in the early days of space exploration." Lina felt a sense of dread wash over her as she realized the implications of their discovery. "This civilization wasn't just destroyed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They were wiped out by the same kind of cataclysm that we're facing on Earth." As they returned to their base camp, the crew of the Exodus knew that they had a terrible decision to make. Could they risk staying on this planet, knowing that it had already witnessed the destruction of one advanced civilization? Or should they press on, searching for a safer haven among the stars? As they debated their options, Lina couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The asteroid that threatened Earth loomed ever closer, and with each passing day, the chances of finding a new home grew slimmer. She knew that they would have to make a choice soon, and as she gazed up at the alien sky, she could only hope that they would make the right one. Chapter 6. The Decision. As the crew of the Exodus gathered around the meeting table, the weight of their decision hung heavy in the air. They had come so far, risked so much, and now they found themselves faced with an impossible choice. Dr. Lina Sorenson stood at the head of the table, her eyes fixed on the star map before her. "We have two options," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. "We can either stay here on Eden and take our chances, or we can keep searching for another planet." Captain Marcus Rodriguez leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "But we're running out of time. The asteroid is getting closer to Earth every day. If we don't find a solution soon—" He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. They all knew what was at stake. Lina nodded, her gaze sweeping over the faces of her crewmates. "I know. But we can't make this decision lightly. If we stay here, we risk facing the same fate as the civilization that came before us. And if we leave—" She hesitated, the words catching in her throat. "If we leave, we risk losing everything we've worked for. We risk never finding another habitable planet." For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the hum of the ship's engines, a constant reminder of the vastness of space that surrounded them. Finally, Dr. Raj Patel cleared his throat. "I think we should put it to a vote," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're all in this together. We should all have a say." Lina nodded, a sense of pride welling up inside her. Her crew had been through so much together, and yet they remained united, even in the face of their greatest challenge. One by one they cast their votes, and when the final tally was counted, the decision was clear. They would stay on Eden. In the days that followed, they threw themselves into the task of building a new home. They sent teams to the surface to begin constructing shelters and gathering resources, while Lina and her fellow scientists worked to decipher the alien technology they had discovered. But even as they worked, they couldn't shake the sense of unease that lingered in the back of their minds. They knew that they were taking a gamble, betting their lives on a planet that had already proven itself to be unpredictable. And then, just as they were beginning to settle into their new routine, they received a transmission from Earth. It was garbled and weak, but the message was clear. The asteroid had struck. Lina felt her heart sink as she listened to the details of the devastation. Millions dead. Entire cities reduced to rubble. The world she had known, the home she had fought so hard to save, was gone. But even in the midst of their grief, the crew of the Exodus knew that they had to keep going. They had a new mission now, a new purpose. They would rebuild. They would create a new home, a new future for the human race, and they would do it together, united by the bonds they had forged in the face of impossible odds. As Lina stood on the surface of Eden, gazing up at the alien sky, she felt a sense of hope stirring in her heart. They had lost so much, but they had also gained something precious, a second chance. And as she looked out over the horizon, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them head-on. They would fight for their future, for the future of all those who had been lost. They would build a new world, a better world, and they would never, ever give up.